My husband thought I was visiting my mother that Friday night. He thought the house was his, the pool was his, and so was she. But I never left. I just watched, and I had already prepared everything. What you're about to hear is my story, told by me, the woman who was betrayed, humiliated, and pushed to her absolute limit. A woman who decided that instead of crying, she would plan. Instead of begging, she would act. Stay with me until the end. Because what happened in that pool changed everything. If you've ever felt betrayed by someone you trusted completely, hit that like button right now. And if you're new here, subscribe so you never miss a story like this. Let's begin. My name is Emma, and for 12 years, I believed I had the life most women dream about. Daniel and I met in college. He was studying business. I was in graphic design. We were young, ambitious, and completely in love, or at least I thought we were. By the time we hit our mid-30s, we had built something most people envied. A beautiful home in one of Austin's quieter, more upscale neighborhoods. A backyard with a pool that shimmered under the Texas sun. 2 teenage kids, Lily, 16, and Caleb, 14, who still, somehow, thought their parents were cool. A stable income. A shared calendar full of weekend barbecues, school events, and date nights that, looking back now, had started feeling more like obligations than choices. From the outside, we were the couple people pointed to. The ones at neighborhood parties who still laughed at each other's jokes. The ones who held hands during school recitals. The ones whose Christmas cards looked like they belonged in a magazine. But inside our walls, inside our actual life, something had been shifting for months. And I felt it the way you feel a storm coming before the clouds even appear. A change in pressure, something invisible, but undeniable. Daniel started staying late at the office. Not once or twice. Consistently. 4 or 5 nights a week. He'd come home smelling like cologne instead of a long day's work. His phone, which used to sit face up on the kitchen counter while we talked about the kids, was now always face down, always on silent, always in his pocket. He started going to the gym every single morning. Daniel had never been a gym person. I used to tease him about it. Now he was waking up at 5:30, slipping out quietly, coming back showered and distant. I noticed. Of course I noticed. But I told myself, he's stressed. Work is hard. He needs space. I was being a good wife. What I didn't realize yet was that I was also being a fool. It was a Tuesday night. An ordinary, forgettable Tuesday. The kids were in their rooms. Daniel was working late again, or so he said. I was in the laundry room, folding clothes, the kind of mindless task that lets your thoughts drift. I was thinking about Lily's upcoming science project, about whether Caleb needed new cleats for soccer, about whether I'd remembered to reschedule the dentist appointment. Normal life. Boring, beautiful, normal life. And then Daniel's phone, which had slipped out of his pants pocket while I sorted laundry, buzzed on top of the dryer. I glanced at it out of habit. The screen lit up with a preview notification before locking again. Just enough to read, "Can't wait to swim again tonight." The contact name was Lucas. Work. I stood completely still. Something in my chest tightened. Lucas. Daniel had mentioned a Lucas before, a colleague from the finance department. I had no reason to think anything was wrong, but that word, again, that specific word, swim. We had a pool. Only we had a pool. I picked up the phone. My hands weren't shaking. That surprised me, because I felt like the floor had just disappeared beneath my feet. My fingerprint wasn't registered on his phone anymore. He'd changed the settings sometime in the last few months. And something inside me, some deep, quiet instinct I had been silencing for months, finally spoke clearly. This is not Lucas from work. I set the phone back on the dryer, face down, exactly as I'd found it. I finished folding the laundry. I put the kids to bed. I said goodnight to Daniel when he came home at 10:15, smelling of cologne that wasn't mine. And then I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, making a decision. No tears, no confrontation. Not yet. I needed to know everything first. I had always respected Daniel's privacy. 12 years of marriage, and I had never once gone through his phone, his email, or his wallet without permission. I was proud of that. I thought it meant we had trust. What it actually meant was that I had been deliberately kept blind. Over the next 72 hours, I moved carefully. I didn't panic. I didn't cry. Not in front of him, anyway. I smiled at breakfast. I asked about his day. I behaved exactly like the Emma he expected. Warm, dependable, unquestioning. But at night, while he slept, I worked. I accessed our shared cloud account, the one we'd set up years ago for family photos. Daniel had forgotten that our phones still synced certain data automatically. Not all of it, but enough. I found timestamps, location data from shared calendar events he'd stopped inviting me to, a pattern of late-night activity on a fitness app we both used, except he wasn't at any gym at 11 p.m. I checked our joint bank statements. Things I'd noticed but dismissed started making terrible sense. Restaurant charges at places I'd never been to, hotel reservations in the same city where we lived, gift purchases from stores that didn't match anything he'd given me. And then, through a friend who worked in HR at a company connected to Daniel's firm, I confirmed what I already knew in my bones. Her name was Sabrina, 26 years old, a junior analyst on Daniel's team, 14 years younger than him. She had started working there 8 months ago. I found her social media. She was beautiful, ambitious, and completely unaware that I existed in any real sense. Or maybe she knew, and simply didn't care. I sat with that information for a long time. I could have called a lawyer that night. I could have packed a bag. I could have waited until Daniel walked through the door and told him exactly what I knew. Instead, I opened a notebook and started writing down everything I could prove and everything I still needed, because I wasn't going to react. I was going to be ready. What most people don't understand about betrayal is that the moment of discovery isn't the hardest part. The hardest part is the days after, when you still have to make breakfast, when you still have to sit across from him at dinner and ask how his day went, when you still have to sleep in the same bed while your mind processes what your heart refuses to accept. I did that for 3 months. 3 months of being the perfect wife on the surface while, underneath, I was building a case with the precision of someone who had nothing left to lose. I created a private email account. I documented everything: screenshots, dates, amounts, locations. I cross-referenced his late nights with our bank statements, every hotel charge, every dinner for two at an upscale restaurant, every boutique purchase that never found its way into our home. I saved copies of everything on an encrypted drive at my office. I met with a divorce attorney, quietly, discreetly. Her name was Catherine, and she had seen every version of this story before. She told me I was doing everything right. She reviewed what I had and confirmed that Texas is a community property state. What he had spent on Sabrina was marital money. That mattered. I also hired a private investigator for 2 weeks, not to get more proof of the affair. I had enough, but to understand the full picture. Who was Sabrina, really? What the investigator found changed the final chapter of my plan entirely. Sabrina was engaged. Her fiancé's name was Marcus Webb, and Marcus Webb was Daniel's direct supervisor at the company. I read that report 3 times. Then I set it down, made myself a cup of tea, and sat quietly in my kitchen, while the whole shape of what was coming rearranged itself in my mind. Everything had just become much more efficient. The plan formed itself naturally, the way all truly inevitable things do. Daniel mentioned it casually one evening, the way people mention things they think are harmless. He said he might invite a few people over on Friday evening for a swim. Casual, he said. Just some work friends. He suggested I visit my mother. She lived 40 minutes outside Austin, and maybe stay the night. Take a break, he said. You've seemed stressed lately. He even offered to handle the kids, who would be at a soccer tournament that weekend. I almost laughed. I said that sounded lovely. I packed a bag. I kissed him on the cheek. I drove away, and then I checked into a small hotel 6 blocks from our house. I had already installed a second access point for our home security cameras, a separate account he didn't know about, linked to a private device. I could see the backyard, the pool, the patio, everything. But before I left that morning, I had done one more thing. The pool supply store near our neighborhood carried a product I had researched carefully. A highly concentrated blue dye used in public pools and water parks. A UV reactive tracer that temporarily stains skin and fabric on contact. Not dangerous, not permanent, completely legal to purchase. I added the entire supply to the pool myself that Friday morning, while Daniel was at the gym. By afternoon, the water looked only slightly deeper in tone. Nothing alarming, just the way a pool looks at the end of a long summer. Then I drove to the hotel, ordered room service, opened my laptop, and waited. The cameras came alive at 8:17 p.m. I watched it all from a small screen in a hotel room 6 blocks away, sitting on the edge of the bed with my dinner untouched beside me. At 8:17, Daniel appeared on the backyard camera. He was dressed casually in the effortless way that takes actual effort. He had set up string lights along the patio, the ones we'd bought together 2 summers ago for a family birthday party, wine glasses on the outdoor table, the good stemware, the set we kept for special occasions. I watched him move through our backyard like he owned every inch of it. He turned on the pool lights. He opened a bottle of red wine. He smiled to himself in a way I hadn't seen him smile at me in a very long time. Sabrina arrived at 8:34. She was exactly as her photos suggested, young, confident, moving through the gate of my backyard with the ease of someone who had been there before. She reached for the wine glass Daniel held out to her as naturally as if she belonged there. They laughed. They touched each other's arms. They sat at my outdoor table, in my patio chairs, under the lights I had helped hang, drinking wine from glasses that had been wedding gifts. I sat very still and breathed very carefully. At 9:11, Sabrina stood and pulled off her cover-up. She stepped to the edge of the pool, looked back at Daniel with a smile I had to force myself to keep watching, and dove in. For about 4 seconds, nothing happened. Then the water around her began to change. It started subtle, a deepening of blue near where she'd entered. Then it spread. She surfaced, shaking water from her hair, still laughing. Then she looked down at her arms, and the laughter stopped. Her forearms were stained a vivid, unmistakable blue. She lifted them out of the water and stared. Her legs, same thing. She touched her face. The yellow swimsuit had turned a shade of teal that would not wash out for days. She started screaming. Daniel lurched to his feet, knocking over his wine glass. He was shouting, moving toward the pool edge, reaching for her hand. But the more Sabrina moved, the more the dye spread. She pulled herself out of the pool in a panic, crying, slipping on the wet tile, yelling at Daniel, asking what was wrong with his pool, whether this was some kind of sick joke. Daniel looked genuinely confused, which was, I noted, the most honest expression I had seen on his face in months. That was when I picked up my car keys. I had a 6-block drive ahead of me, and I had been rehearsing what I was going to say for 3 months. I pulled into the driveway at 9:26 p.m. I had changed into clean clothes at the hotel. Nothing dramatic, nothing performative, just a simple dark blouse and jeans. I had touched up my makeup with the calm precision of someone who had been preparing for this exact moment for 90 days. I left my overnight bag in the car. I didn't need it anymore. I walked around the side of the house to the backyard gate, the same way I always did when returning from my mother's. The gate opened quietly. What I found was this: Sabrina standing near the pool steps, wrapped in one of my good towels, the monogrammed ones I'd ordered from a boutique in Nashville. Her skin streaked a vivid cobalt blue from her forearms to her collarbone. Her mascara had run badly. Her yellow swimsuit, now a bruised shade of teal, dripped onto my patio stones. Daniel stood a few feet away, mid-Google search for whatever he thought might explain what had just happened to his girlfriend in his wife's pool. They both turned when they heard the gate. The silence that followed was one of the most complete silences I have ever experienced. No traffic, no wind, just the soft hum of the pool filter and the distant sound of a neighbor's television drifting over the fence. I looked at Sabrina first. I kept my voice very calm. "You must be Sabrina," I said. "I've read your messages. All of them." She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. I looked at Daniel. He had gone very still in the way that men go still when they realize the version of events they'd constructed in their mind has just collapsed entirely. "Daniel," I said, "I've been home for about 6 blocks worth of time. I've also been home, in every way that matters, for the last 3 months." I held up my phone and pressed record. "I thought the pool deserved to know who was swimming in it," I said. Sabrina grabbed her bag and walked, nearly ran, through the gate without another word. I heard her car door, her engine, and then nothing. Daniel and I stood alone in the backyard, under the string lights we'd bought for a family birthday, next to the pool I had chemically marked with 3 months of silent grief. He started to speak. I raised one hand, very slightly. "Not tonight," I said. "Tonight you're going to listen." And then I told him everything I knew, not loudly, not with tears, with a voice so steady it frightened even me. Daniel's first instinct, standing in that backyard while the pool lights threw long blue shadows across the patio, was to explain, to manage, to find the version of the truth that cost him the least. He started with, "Emma, in that particular tone men use when they want to make your name sound like an apology and a plea at the same time. I let him speak for approximately 45 seconds. Then I set my phone on the patio table and opened the folder I had organized over 3 months. Not the originals. Those were safe with Catherine, my attorney. These were copies, clean, printed, organized into a simple document that took less than 5 minutes to read. I slid it across the table toward him. The Marriott on South Congress. 4 times, I said. The dinner at Uchi, the one you told me was a client event. The Nordstrom charge in March that I assumed was for Lily's birthday. The weekend you said you were at the sales conference in Dallas. He looked down at the pages. His face cycled through denial, calculation, and then something closer to resignation. I've known for 3 months, I said. Not suspected. Known. I gave you 3 months because I needed to understand the full scope of what you had done. With our money, with our life, before I made a single move. He looked up. Emma, Catherine Reyes has the originals, I said. She's been my attorney since February. The petition is prepared. The financial documentation, every transfer, every charge, every withdrawal from our joint account that went toward your relationship with Sabrina, is already filed as evidence of marital waste under Texas law. We are a community property state. What you spent on her came from both of us. The color left his face in a visible wave. You've been planning this, he said. I've been protecting myself, I said. There's a difference. I picked up my phone from the table. I had one more thing in reserve, something involving Sabrina, and a name Daniel would recognize immediately. But I didn't tell him that part yet. Some surprises are worth saving. What I hadn't told Daniel, what I'd been holding quietly in reserve like a final card, was what the private investigator had discovered about Sabrina. She wasn't just a junior analyst having an affair with a married man. She was engaged. Her fiancé's name was Marcus Webb. And Marcus Webb was not a minor figure in this story. Marcus was Daniel's direct supervisor, his boss, the man who signed off on his performance reviews, approved his bonus structure, and had the authority to end his employment with a single email to HR. I had sat with this information for weeks, turning it over carefully, thinking about what to do with it, and when. The morning after the pool incident, I made my decision. I sent Marcus a single message from a neutral email address created specifically for this purpose. No drama, no lengthy explanation, just a factual note, 3 sentences long, with 2 attachments. A photograph from the security camera showing Daniel and Sabrina together in our backyard, and a screenshot of one of their text exchanges that made the nature and duration of the relationship impossible to misread. I didn't ask Marcus to do anything. I simply made sure he had the truth. He responded in under 4 minutes. The response was 2 words. I won't repeat them here. On Monday morning, Daniel drove to work as usual. He sat at his desk. He made his coffee. At 10:15, he received a calendar invitation from Human Resources marked urgent. By 11:45, he had been formally notified that his employment was terminated, effective immediately, for violating the company's policy on undisclosed personal relationships between supervisors and subordinates, a policy he had signed and acknowledged the previous January. He came home at noon. I was not there. I was having lunch with Catherine, finalizing the last details of the divorce filing. Daniel called my phone 4 times. I let them go to voicemail. The 5th time, I answered and said calmly, "You should call your own attorney, Daniel. Today, if possible." Then I ended the call and ordered dessert. 3 months after that Friday night, the house on Maplewood Lane went on the market. It sold in 11 days. Austin's market was still strong in the fall, and we had maintained the property well. The yard was beautiful. The pool was pristine. The listing photos made the whole place look exactly like what it had always pretended to be, a perfect family home. The divorce settlement, finalized with Catherine's steady guidance and the full weight of 3 months of documented evidence, was fair in the way that justice is sometimes fair. Daniel left with considerably less than he'd imagined, and I left with considerably more than I'd feared. The financial waste argument held. The kids would spend time with both of us, in a structure we negotiated carefully, keeping their disruption as minimal as possible. Lily handled it better than I expected. Caleb took longer, but they were strong kids, and they had a mother who had demonstrated, quietly and completely, that she did not fall apart under pressure. I moved into a smaller place on the east side of Austin, newer, with a courtyard, but no pool. I did not miss the pool. What I missed, for a time, was the idea of the life we were supposed to have. But ideas, I was learning, are not the same thing as lives. 6 weeks after we closed on the house, I drove back to Maplewood Lane. I told myself I just needed to see it one more time. New owners had already moved in. As I sat in my car across the street, I could see through the side gate that they were using the pool. Children's voices, splashing. Someone's music playing softly from a Bluetooth speaker on the patio. A little girl, maybe 8 years old, ran to the gate and peered through the slats at the street. She spotted me and called out, "Did something happen here before?" Kids notice things that adults pretend not to. I stepped out of the car and walked toward the gate. I crouched down to her level and smiled. "Let's just say," I told her, "the water used to reveal the truth." She considered this seriously, the way children consider things they don't fully understand, but somehow know are important. Then she ran back to the pool, and I got back in my car, and I drove away toward whatever came next. The water was still blue, but it was clean now, and so was I. Thank you so much for watching this story all the way to the end. It means more than you know. Emma's story is one of silence, strength, and the kind of planning that only comes when someone truly has nothing left to lose and everything left to protect. Now I want to hear from you. What would you have done in Emma's place? Would you have confronted Daniel the night you found the message? Or would you have planned, just like she did? Tell me in the comments. Do you have a story, something that happened to you or someone you know, that deserves to be told? Leave it below. Every story shared here is treated with respect. If this video moved you, if it made you feel something real, please hit the like button. It only takes a second, and it helps this channel reach people who need to hear stories like this one. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. Hit that bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Because next time, the betrayal doesn't happen in the backyard, it happens at the altar. See you then.